The grand chamber of the Galactic Council was never quiet, but today the noise felt sharp, like metal scraping stone. 12 species sat in a wide circle beneath cold blue lights. Some had claws on the table, some had tendrils, some had faces that didn't move at all. Yet everyone was watching the same empty seat on the far end, the human seat. 6 months, Ambassador Sael of the Altari said, voice smooth as polished glass. His silver skin shimmered when he leaned forward. Humans arrive, and immediately they ask for equal voting rights, trade access, military cooperation. They do not request, they expect. Across the table, Counselor Click-Click of the insectoid Karsh clicked his mandibles in disgust. Their planet is rated only Class 7 for comfort, mild gravity, soft weather cycles, too much water, too much oxygen, a nursery world. A few delegates nodded. Some looked annoyed. Others looked nervous, even if they tried to hide it. Elder Nera of the Symphons raised a thin hand. They fought wars among themselves and still reached the stars. That means something. Sael's smile didn't warm his eyes. It means they are loud, not strong. The argument had looped for hours. Ignore humans, limit their voice, give them small duties. But Sael had come with a sharper idea, one that would solve the human issue without open conflict. He tapped the table once. Give them what they want. The chamber quieted. Give them a challenge that proves whether they truly belong among us. Sael's voice became softer, almost gentle. Offer them a colony charter on Korath Prime. Even the translators seemed to hesitate before converting the words. Korath Prime. The name carried weight like a storm cloud. A Class 15 Deathworld, rated at the top of the danger scale. The kind of planet whispered about in training academies to scare reckless young explorers. Past expeditions lasted days, some lasted hours. The storms can peel skin, someone muttered. The air corrodes standard alloys, another said. The ground moves, whispered a third. The planet reshapes itself. Elder Nera looked sick. That world has taken thousands. Sael spread his hands like he was offering peace. Exactly. Humans believe they deserve respect. Let them earn it. And if they succeed, bubbled Counselor Brick of the Tidewalkers, his voice trembling like water. Sael answered quickly, too quickly. They won't. Numbers appeared on the central hollow. Survival estimates, supply burn rates, probability curves. The math was cold, the conclusion colder. In the end, the vote passed. A chance was drafted. A historic opportunity was packaged in pretty words, and a message was prepared for Earth. Prove yourselves. Join us. Stand where the strong stand. 3 weeks later, Captain Mara Reed stood on the bridge of the colony ship Resolute, staring at the mission file. She was steady-eyed, older than most of her crew, with the calm posture of someone who'd survived real storms. Final data just came in, Navigator Hayes said. Council sent environmental readings and a note. A note, Reed repeated. Hayes swallowed. They'll be observing from orbit, officially for historical documentation. Reed didn't like that, not one bit. She looked out at her crew, engineers, scientists, security, families with children, 500 people who had packed their whole lives into a gamble. Reed exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of every heartbeat aboard her ship. All right, she said, voice firm but gentle. We land tomorrow. We don't panic, we don't rush, we adapt together. Then she lowered her voice, almost to herself. And if they're watching for us to break, her eyes narrowed, they're about to learn what humans do when they're pushed.
But the moment Korath Prime filled the forward viewport, covered in violet storms and green lightning, Reed noticed something the Council didn't include in the report. A signal pulsing from the surface, like the planet was already aware they were coming.
Korath Prime looked unreal up close, like a living bruise in space. From orbit, the planet's clouds swirled in violent spirals. Purple storms rolled over jagged continents. Green lightning cracked so often it almost looked like a heartbeat. Even the oceans were the wrong color, dark, heavy, and shining like oil. Captain Mara Reed kept her hands behind her back so no one would see how tightly she'd clenched them. "Atmosphere scan?" she asked. Dr. Lena Park, the lead scientist, read from her tablet. Her voice stayed calm, but her eyes didn't. "Oxygen is high, nitrogen stable, but there are corrosive particles in the lower air. We'll need filters. And there's a lot of microbial activity." "A lot how?" Reed asked. Park hesitated. "Like the planet is crowded." Lieutenant Ochoa, head of security, gave a short laugh with no humor. "Crowded with what, Doctor? Things that bite?" Park didn't answer directly. "Things that live." Behind them, the crew worked in tight silence. People moved slower than usual, like their bodies were trying to delay time. Families held each other near the cargo bay. A little boy pressed his face to the window and whispered, "It's pretty," like he was trying to convince himself. Reed looked again at the Council's message playing on a side screen. Formal words, polite smiles, and a promise. "We will observe from orbit for safety and documentation." She didn't trust a single syllable of it. "Launch landing craft," Reed ordered. "Site Delta. We stick to the plan." The landing craft shook as it entered the atmosphere. Wind slammed the hull so hard it sounded like giant fists. The sky outside turned into a blur of violet cloud and bright green flashes. Then, sudden quiet. They broke through the storm layer and dropped into a wide valley surrounded by black mountains. The air down here was clearer, but it smelled sharp like wet stone and metal. The craft landed with a heavy thud. For a moment, no one moved. Reed heard her own breathing inside her helmet. Slow, controlled, honest fear kept on a leash. "Pressure check?" Hayes said. "Stable," the engineer replied. "Outer temperature?" "Cold enough to sting, not deadly." Reed nodded. "Open the ramp. 2 minutes only. Quick air test." The ramp lured. Wind rushed in, cold, aggressive, full of grit. Everyone flinched. Dr. Park stepped forward with a small drone. The drone floated out, took samples, and returned. Park's fingers moved fast as she read the results. Then her eyebrows lifted. "Well?" Hayes asked. Park looked confused. "It's breathable." Ochoa blinked. "You mean it won't melt our lungs?" "It might irritate," Park said slowly, "but the filters handle most of it. Honestly, I expected worse." Reed stared out at the valley. The ground wasn't normal soil. It looked like dark glass mixed with ash. Strange plants grew in sharp clusters, as if the world had decided that softness was a weakness. Then a sound came from the distance, a deep rumble, low, steady, like something huge moving underground. Ochoa's hand went to his sidearm. "Everyone back inside." But Park held up her tablet. "Wait, there's something else." "What?" Reed asked. Park turned the screen toward her. A pulse had appeared on the sensors, regular, repeating. "A signal," Park whispered. "Not random, not weather." Reed felt her stomach tighten, because the signal wasn't coming from orbit. It was coming from the surface, and it was getting stronger, like it knew they had landed. Before Reed could give another order, the ground in front of the ramp split open, quietly, carefully, and something rose from the crack, not attacking, not fleeing, but watching them back. The crack in the ground widened like a slow mouth opening. Everyone froze. Wind hissed over the dark valley. The landing craft's lights painted long shadows on the glassy soil. Lieutenant Ochoa raised his weapon, but his finger didn't touch the trigger. Not yet. Not while the unknown was still deciding what it wanted to be. Something rose from the split earth. It wasn't a monster in the way people imagined monsters. No roaring, no rushing, no teeth flashing in the light. It came up with calm control, as if it had all the time in the universe. It was tall, taller than a human. Its body looked like layered stone mixed with flexible bark. Thin lines of faint light ran across it like veins. No eyes that Reed could recognize, but its head turned toward them with perfect focus. Then it made a sound, not a scream, not a growl, a low, smooth tone, almost like a note from a deep instrument. Dr. Lena Park stepped forward before anyone could stop her. "It's communicating," she whispered. "Back up," Ochoa warned. "Doctor, now." Park didn't retreat, but she kept her hands open, palms out, showing emptiness. "We came in peace," she said softly, as if the words mattered even if the creature couldn't understand them. Captain Reed forced herself to move. Her boots hit the ramp with a dull clang. She stepped beside Park, not in front, because bravery wasn't blocking bullets. Bravery was standing where the fear lived and not letting it choose for you. The being tilted its head again, and then, impossibly, it copied the rhythm of Park's breathing. In, out, in, out. It wasn't perfect, but it was close enough to make Reed's skin prickle under her suit. "It's mirroring us," Park said, voice shaking with excitement and terror at the same time. "It's trying to match our patterns." Ochoa muttered, "Or it's learning how to hunt us." Reed didn't answer. Her heart was pounding too hard for clean words. A small child's voice came from behind them inside the craft. "Mom, what is that?" A mother pulled her child back, but the question hung in the air like smoke. The being made the deep tone again, then lifted an arm, slowly, and pointed toward the valley floor, where the sensor signal was strongest. Reed glanced at Park. "Is it guiding us?" Park nodded, eyes wide. "Or warning us, or inviting us." Ochoa stepped closer to Reed, lowering his voice. "Captain, we don't know what it is. We don't know if there are more. We don't know if this is bait." "I know," Reed whispered. Up above, far beyond the clouds, the Galactic Council's observer ships floated unseen. Reed could almost feel their eyes, their judgment, their hope that humans would fail. A shark anger flared in her chest, not loud, not wild, just steady heat. If this was a test, it wasn't only about weather or gravity. It was about fear. And humans had lived with fear since they first looked into the dark and decided to walk forward anyway. Reed raised her hand slowly, matching the being's careful pace, and pointed at herself. "Mara," she said clearly. Then she pointed toward Park. "Lena." The being paused. The lights under its skin flickered. Then it touched its own chest, and the deep tone changed, shaping into something closer to a word. Korath. Park's breath caught. It said the planet's name, or its own. The being turned, taking one step back from the ramp, and waited, still, patient, almost respectful, like it expected them to follow. Reed took one step onto Korath Prime's soil, and the moment her boot touched the ground, her suit alarms lit up, because the harmless air wasn't attacking her lungs, it was rewriting the filters, like something on this planet was learning how human technology worked.
The alarms on Mara Reed's suit didn't scream. They chirped, sharp, quick warnings that made her stomach drop anyway. Filter adaptation detected. Unauthorized particle interface. System response auto-optimizing. Reed stared at the glowing lines on her wrist display. "Lena," she said tightly, "tell me that's normal." Dr. Park stepped closer, scanning Reed's suit with her handheld sensor. Her hands were steady, but her eyes were not. "It's not normal," she admitted, "but it's not damage either." Ochoa leaned in. "Explain it in human words." Park swallowed. "Something in the air, microbes maybe, touched the filter mesh. Instead of clogging it, it interacted with it, like it recognized the pattern and adjusted around it." Reed's throat felt dry. "So the planet is working with the filter? Or trying to understand it, like it's curious?" Ochoa's jaw tightened. "Curious things can still kill you." The tall being, Korath, or whatever it truly was, stood a few steps away, watching without moving. It didn't rush them. It didn't show fear. It simply waited, as if patience was part of its body. Reed forced herself to breathe slowly. In, out. She didn't want to give her fear a microphone. "Hayes," she said into her comms, "bring the environmental canopy and the first habitat frames, slow and careful." "Aye, Captain," Hayes replied, voice thin. "We're moving." Crew members stepped down the ramp in pairs, boots crunching over the glassy ground. They looked like people walking onto the surface of a sleeping animal, praying it wouldn't wake up. 2 drones floated out, scanning ahead. Their cameras fed into Park's tablet. And then Park frowned. "What?" asked Reed. Park turned the screen so Reed could see. "The air composition is shifting around us." Reed felt cold spread through her chest. "Shifting how?" Park pointed. "The corrosive particles are lowering right where we stand. It's like a pocket of safer air is forming around the landing site." Ochoa looked past the screen toward the being. "That thing is doing it." Park nodded slowly. "I think so." Reed didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. Help from a stranger could be kindness, or it could be control. She stepped closer to the being, stopping at a respectful distance. "If you're helping us," she said softly, "thank you." The being tilted its head again. The lights under its surface flickered in a gentle wave. It made that deep tone, low and steady, then pointed toward the valley again. But this time, it didn't only point. It placed its hand on the ground. The soil vibrated. A thin line cracked outward like a drawn path, dark glass splitting in a straight, clean direction. The crack glowed faintly, as if heat lived below. Park's mouth opened. "It's marking a route." "Or showing us where not to go," Ochoa said. Reed looked at the path, then at her people hauling supplies, trying to act brave for their children. She could see the fear in their shoulders, in the way their heads kept turning, searching for threats. Up above, the council ships watched. Reed could almost imagine them smiling, waiting for the first panic, the first casualty, the first proof that humans didn't belong. Reed's hands curled into fists, then relaxed. "We build here," she decided. "We don't chase signals into the unknown on day one." Ochoa nodded once, grateful for the caution. Park hesitated. "Captain, the signal from earlier is still pulsing, stronger now." Reed stared at the valley, at the route the being had drawn, at the sky that flickered green with lightning. "Let it pulse," Reed said quietly. "We'll answer it when we're ready." The being lifted its hand from the ground, and the glowing crack path remained, like a promise, like a warning. That night, as the first human habitat lights warmed the valley, Reed woke to a new sound outside. Hundreds of deep tones answering each other in the dark.
and when she checked the drone feed, she saw shapes rising from the ground all around the camp, forming a silent circle, as if the planet had decided to hold them in place.
Mara Reed woke with her hand already reaching for her comms. The sound wasn't a scream, but it dragged her out of sleep like a hook. Deep tones rolled through the night air, low, repeating, layered like voices singing from inside stone. The habitat lights cast pale yellow pools onto the glassy ground outside. She sat up fast, heart hammering. "Status," she whispered into the comms. Lieutenant Ochoa answered instantly, like he hadn't slept at all. "I hear it too. Drones are up. Don't go outside." Reed swung her legs off the cot and crossed to the monitoring screen. The drone feed loaded in shaky darkness, night vision painting the valley in doe greens. And then she saw them. Shapes. Dozens. Then hundreds. They weren't running. They weren't charging. They simply rose from the earth like plants growing in seconds. Tall bodies, layered like bark and stone, faint light lines glowing under their surfaces. They stood at equal distances from each other, forming a wide ring around the human camp. A circle, a fence, a trap. Reed's throat tightened. "How close?" Ochoa's voice was low. "Outer ring starts at 100 meters, another ring beyond that, and beyond that, I can't count." Reed stared at the screen, forcing her breathing to slow. Her mind tried to jump to the worst answer. We're surrounded. But the footage showed something else, too. No raised arms, no sudden moves, no aggressive posture. Just stillness. Dr. Park's voice came on the comms, shaky with excitement. "They're matching our layout. Look, distance between them is almost the same as the spacing of our habitat modules." Ochoa snapped. "That doesn't make it friendly." Park replied softly. "It also doesn't make it hostile." Reed watched one of the beings tilt its head slightly toward the camp lights. A faint glow pulsed in its chest, like a slow heartbeat responding to warmth. "Why do it? Why surround us?" Park whispered. "Maybe it's a ritual, a greeting, or a guard." Ochoa gave a bitter laugh. "Or a cage." Reed checked the internal sensors. The air inside was stable. The filters were still auto-optimizing, shifting minute by minute, as if the planet kept learning the best way to breathe with them instead of against them. It felt wrong. Not deadly wrong, more like being watched by something that didn't blink. Reed opened the channel to the whole camp. "Everyone stay inside. No lights outside the perimeter. No firing unless I give the order." A few anxious voices answered yes. Then a new voice appeared, Hayes, whispering like he was afraid sound would travel through the walls. "Captain, the council ships just moved." Reed's eyes narrowed. "Moved how?" "They repositioned," Hayes said. "Orbit tightened, like they're getting a better view." Of course they were. The council wanted a show. Reed clenched her jaw. "Do not give them one." Minutes passed. The deep tones outside kept going, call and response, like an ocean made of stone. Reed couldn't understand it, but she could feel it. The sound carried an emotion that made her chest ache. Not anger, not hunger, something older, something like judgment. Then the drone feed shifted suddenly. One of the beings stepped forward toward the camp. Not fast, not slow, just deliberate. It approached until it stood only 50 meters away. Then it lowered itself, kneeling in a way that was almost human, and placed something on the ground. A mound rose, like the earth itself was being pushed up from below. The mound split open gently, and a plant unfurled. Its leaves glowed faintly, giving off a soft, steady light like a lantern. Then the being backed away and returned to the ring. Park gasped. "It's giving us light!" Ochoa whispered, "Or marking us." Reed stared at the glowing plant.
her fear mixing with something else, an unexpected sting behind her eyes. Because the gesture looked like care, and care from something unknown was the most dangerous kind, because it made you want to trust. At dawn, Reed stepped outside with Park and Ochoa, and found the glowing plant had grown into a line, hundreds of lights stretching away from camp, pointing directly toward the pulsing signal source. And at the far end of the line, something massive moved under the ground.
Morning on Korath Prime didn't feel like sunrise. It felt like the storms took a break to breathe. The violet clouds thinned just enough to show a pale, bruised sky. Green lightning still flickered far away, but softer now, like it was watching from a distance. Captain Mara Reed stepped out of the habitat with Dr. Park and Lieutenant Ochoa. Cold air bit at their suits. The ground glittered like dark glass under the early light. And the circle was still there. The beings stood around the camp in perfect spacing, unmoving. In daylight, Reed could see details she missed at night. Their bodies were not uniform. Some had thicker armor layers. Some were slimmer, with longer arms. The light lines under their surfaces pulsed differently, like each one had its own rhythm. They weren't identical soldiers. They were individuals. Reed's eyes dropped to the ground near the perimeter. The glowing plant from the night before was no longer alone. It had multiplied. Hundreds of soft lights formed a trail leading away from camp, like lanterns placed by invisible hands. The line stretched across the valley floor and disappeared into the distance, aiming straight toward the signal source Park had detected. Park stared, breath fogging her visor. "They want us to follow." Ochoa's voice was hard. "Or they want us to leave our safe zone." Reed didn't answer right away. She looked up, toward the sky. Somewhere above the clouds, the Council's observer ships floated, watching like judges behind curtains. Reed could almost hear their silent words. "Go on. Step into the Deathworld. Show us what happens." She turned back to the trail. "We don't chase it with the whole camp," she said. "Small team, fast return, no hero moves." Park nodded quickly. "I'll go." Ochoa said, "I'm going." Reed paused, and then added, "And I'm going." Ochoa started to argue, but Reed cut him off with one look. "If this is a trap, they'll want the leader. If it's not, they'll still want to understand who decides for us." They prepared within the hour, 3 humans, 1 drone, and a limited set of tools. The rest of the colony stayed inside the perimeter, watching through cameras and thick glass. As they stepped onto the glowing trail, the beings in the circle shifted. Not toward them, away. They opened a gap like a doorway. Reed felt her stomach twist. "They're letting us out," Park whispered, "or escorting us." They followed the line of glowing plants across the valley. The plants grew in the cracks of the glassy soil, always spaced evenly, always pointing forward. The tone singing from the night before was gone now, replaced by an uneasy quiet. Then Reed felt it, a vibration in her boots, soft at first, like distant thunder, then stronger. The ground trembled in steady pulses, not random, not storm-related. "Seismic?" Ochoa asked. Park checked her sensor. Her face tightened. "It's not seismic. It's patterned." Reed stared at the landscape ahead. "Like footsteps." They stopped. The drone hovered higher, scanning forward. And that's when the valley floor began to rise. Not a hill, not a wave, a shape. A massive ridge lifted from beneath the soil and moved slowly under the surface, pushing the glassy ground upward as it traveled. It was heading toward the trail, toward them. Ochoa raised his weapon. "Back to camp, now!" Reed's voice stayed calm, but her pulse wasn't. "Hold, no sudden moves." The ridge stopped about 30 meters away. Then the earth split open.
Something huge emerged, twice the height of the beings that surrounded the camp. Its skin looked like layered rock plates, with glowing channels running through them like rivers of light. Its body was wide and heavy, but it moved with careful balance, like it didn't want to crush the world it lived on. It turned toward them, and the air around it shifted, changing pressure in a way Reed could feel in her chest. Park's voice came out as a whisper. "This is the source, the signal." The massive being made a sound that was deeper than anything they'd heard before. It wasn't just a tone, it carried vibration, like the sound was meant to travel through ground and bone. Reed felt it in her ribs. Then it lowered its head, a gesture that looked shockingly like respect. Ochoa lowered his weapon a few centimeters, uncertain. Reed took one careful step forward, and the massive being extended a hand. In its palm was a stone-like object, shaped strangely smooth, carved with lines that matched the pulse pattern on Park's sensor. A message, or a key. As Reed reached out to take the carved stone, her suit translator flickered and auto-activated on its own, and a new line appeared on her display, not from any human system, but from something inside the stone. "Welcome, Earthchild. You are late."
Mara Reed's hand stopped in the air. The carved stone sat in the giant being's palm like it belonged there, like it had been waiting a long time. The lines on it glowed faintly, matching the pulse Dr. Park had tracked since landing. Then Reed's suit display flickered. A line of text appeared, clean, sharp, impossible. "Welcome, Earthchild. You are late." For a second, Reed forgot how to breathe. Park's eyes went wide behind her visor. "Captain, did you—" "I see it," Reed whispered, voice tight. "I see it." Ochoa's weapon lowered another inch, not because he trusted the being, but because fear was changing shape into shock. "That's not from our translator," he said. "Our systems don't do that." Park's fingers moved fast over her tablet. "The stone is emitting a structured signal. It's bypassing the translator and feeding the suit interface directly, like it already understands our hardware language." Reed stared up at the giant being. "How?" The being didn't answer in words. It made a deep tone, and the ground hummed in response. The smaller beings, those standing far behind, echoed the sound softly, like a chorus agreeing with a leader. Then new text appeared on Reed's display. "We have watched many fall. We have watched few try. You came with children." Reed's throat tightened at that last sentence. She pictured the families back at camp, the little boy who called the Deathworld pretty, the mother who pulled him close. 500 lives resting on the choices she made. Park's voice shook, full of wonder. "It's aware of our colony composition. It observed us immediately." Ochoa stepped closer to Reed, protective by instinct. "Captain, this is too smooth. It's like it expected us." Reed swallowed. "It did expect us. It said we're late." She looked at the stone again, then carefully, slowly, took it from the giant's palm. It was warm. Not heat from sunlight, not heat from friction. Warm like something alive. The moment her glove touched it, a wave of information rippled through her suit display, symbols, patterns, and then words that settled into place as if her interface was translating emotions into language. Korath Prime is not a world. It is a guardian. It is a door. Reed felt her stomach drop. A door to what? Park whispered. Maybe a passage, a facility, an ancient system. Ochoa's voice hardened. Or a weapon. The giant being leaned closer. Reed didn't move, though every part of her body begged to step back. She held her ground, forcing her fear to stay quiet. A new sentence formed. "The ones above sent you to die. We heard their hope. We do not share it." Reed's breath caught. Up above, the council. So it knew. It knew humans were being tested like animals in a cage.
It knew the Watchers wanted blood. Reed felt anger flare, but underneath it was something softer, hurt, a cold realization that the welcome from the stars had been a lie wrapped in polite words. Ochoa's voice spoke like he was spitting nails. They tried to murder us. Park looked at Reed. Captain, if this being is telling the truth, we were never meant to succeed. Reed's hands tightened around the stone. Her voice lowered, full of quiet steel. Then we succeed anyway. The giant being lifted its other hand and pointed, not back to camp, but toward the Black Mountains, toward the deepest storm wall on the horizon. Reed's display showed one final line. Come, see what they hid. Choose what you will become. Reed turned her head slightly, looking back along the glowing trail. Far away, she could just make out the warm lights of the human habitats, tiny, brave sparks in a dangerous valley. She thought of every person waiting for her return, and she made her decision. We go, she said. Ochoa started to protest, but Reed cut in gently, emotion thick in her voice. Not for adventure, not for pride, for safety, for truth, for our people. Park nodded, tears floating in her eyes behind the visor. For a future. They began walking toward the mountains, the giant being moving beside them like a living wall of stone and light. And above the clouds, the council ships kept watching, still confident, still cruel. They had no idea what was about to wake up. As they reached the first ridge of the Black Mountains, Reed's stone flared bright, her suit display filled with a single urgent warning. The council is descending. They are not here to observe anymore.
The warning burned on Mara Reed's display like a wound. The council is descending. They are not here to observe anymore. Reed stopped walking. The cold wind slid between the mountain rocks, carrying a metallic taste. Far behind them, the valley camp lights looked small, too small, like a candle in a storm. Ochoa's voice snapped through the comms. Descending? That means landing craft. Dr. Park looked up at the sky, but the cloud ceiling hid everything. They're coming down into the atmosphere. Why would they risk that? Reed already knew the answer, and it made her stomach twist. They're scared, she said quietly. They didn't expect us to still be alive. They didn't expect this. She nodded at the massive Korath being beside them. The giant Korath being made a low tone, and the stone in Reed's hand warmed again. New words formed on her display, slow and heavy. They fear witnesses. They fear shame. They fear you will speak. Ochoa's hands curled into fists. So they'll erase us instead. Park's voice cracked. 500 people, families, kids. Reed's chest tightened. For a moment she saw the little boy again, smiling at the window. It's pretty. Pretty didn't mean safe. Reed turned back down the path. We return to camp now, fast. They moved quickly along the ridgeline, the giant Korath being gliding over stone like it weighed nothing. Smaller Korath beings appeared along the rocks, emerging from cracks, joining silently, an escort that felt like a warning sign to anyone watching. As they neared the valley, the air changed. The stormlight grew brighter. A faint roar spread through the sky, growing louder by the second. Engines. Reed's comms crackled with Hayes's voice. Captain, we've got multiple signatures dropping through the cloud layer. Not ours, not human. Reed broke into a run, boots slipping on the slick, glassy ground. Seal the habitats. Bring everyone inside. No one outside the perimeter. No exceptions. Copy, Hayes shouted. The roaring became a scream overhead. Then the first council craft punched through the clouds, sleek, silver, and arrogant. It hovered over the valley like a knife suspended over a throat. 3 more followed, forming a triangle around the human camp. Reed skidded to a stop at the edge of the perimeter, staring up. A voice boomed from external speakers, translated into harsh, clear English.
Human colony vessel Resolute, you are in violation of Council Safety Charter Article 9. You will surrender your leadership and halt all surface activity immediately. Ochoa whispered, "That's fake. There is no Article 9. Park's eyes widened. They're making an excuse. Reed's anger rose, but she kept it buried under control. "They're not here to arrest us," she said quietly. "They're here to finish what they started." The craft lowered, and a ramp opened. Figures emerged, armored, tall, carrying weapons that shimmered with energy fields. Not diplomats, enforcers. Reed's comms filled with frightened voices from inside the habitats, parents asking what was happening, children crying, people praying. Reed felt her throat tighten until it hurt. This wasn't a battlefield she chose, but it was one she stood on anyway. She looked to the Korath beings around the camp. They had shifted positions, tightening their circle, but not around the humans, around the council troops, like a net closing. The giant Korath being stepped forward, placing itself between the enforcers and the habitats. Its body lights brightened, and the ground hummed beneath everyone's feet. Reed's stone flashed, showing one line. They broke the old agreement. Now the world may answer. The lead enforcer raised his weapon. "Move aside, creature." The Korath being didn't move. The enforcer fired. A beam of energy struck the Korath being's chest, and instead of burning through, the beam bent. The energy curved like light hitting water, sliding off harmlessly into the ground. The ground answered with a deep, angry vibration. Ochoa exhaled in disbelief. It redirected it. Park whispered, almost crying. "The planet is shielding itself." Reed felt something shift inside her, fear turning into a fierce, shaking hope. Because the Council had come to erase the humans, but Korath Prime had decided to protect them. Rehook, end of part hook. As the enforcers panicked and fired again, Korath Prime's surface split open behind them, revealing a vast glowing structure underground, and Reed realized the Council wasn't just trying to kill humans, they were trying to keep that buried forever.
The second volley of energy fire didn't hit the Korath giant. It didn't hit anything the way weapons were supposed to. The beams curved and slid, like reality itself had become a smooth wall. Some shots disappeared into the ground, swallowed without sound. Others flashed off into the sky, leaving bright scars in the clouds. The Council enforcers froze, shocked that the planet refused to behave like a victim. Then, the ground behind them cracked open. Not like an earthquake, like a door unlocking. A long seam of light spread across the valley floor, straight and clean, as if someone had drawn it with a blade. The glassy soil folded back in two perfect halves. Warm glow poured out from below, gold and white, bright enough to make everyone's visors dim automatically. Reed stared into the opening. Down there was not dirt, not rock. It was structure, smooth walls, curved arches, patterns that pulsed like a slow breathing machine. It looked ancient and impossible at the same time, too precise to be natural, too alive to be simple metal. Park's voice shook. "That's not geology, that's engineering." Ochoa muttered, "That's a secret." The Council lead enforcer turned sharply toward the opening. Even through his helmet, Reed could feel his panic. "All units, contain that breach, now!" Two enforcers broke formation and rushed toward the edge. The Korath beings around them did not attack. They simply shifted. The ground rose in front of the enforcers like a wave made of stone. The men stumbled back, nearly falling. Their boots scraped against glassy soil that had turned suddenly rough, gripping like sandpaper. Reed heard Hayes shouting through comms from inside the habitat. "Captain, Council craft are locking weapons. They're aiming at us, at the camp." Reed's blood went cold. "Everyone stay inside," she shouted. "Get to the center modules, now!" Inside the habitats, screams rose, crying, orders, fear.
Reed looked up at the hovering craft. A charging hum built, louder and louder, like a storm collecting itself. "They're going to fire on civilians," Ochoa said, voice breaking with anger. Park stared at the underground structure, then at Reed. "Captain, I think this is why they brought us here, not to test us." Reed swallowed hard. "Then why?" Park's eyes were wide with horrible understanding. "To open it." The words hit Reed like a punch. Humans, new to the galaxy, curious, stubborn, the kind of people who land and explore and touch everything. The Council didn't want their own people to risk, so they used humans as the key. Send them to a death world and wait. Either they die or they trigger whatever is buried. Then the Council swoops in to claim it. Reed's chest tightened until it hurt. "We were bait," she whispered. The Korath giant stepped closer to Reed, towering like a mountain given form. The stone in her hand warmed, and new text appeared. "We sealed the door long ago. The Council forgot fear. You remember fear. That is why you survive." Reed's eyes stung. She didn't want to cry in front of her people, in front of enemies, in front of a world that felt alive, but the emotion kept pushing up anyway. "We didn't come to steal. We came to live." The Korath tone made a tone that felt like approval. Above, the Council craft reached full charge. A bright line formed under its hull, an energy weapon ready to cut the valley in half. Reed's mind raced. If that beam hit the habitats, people would vanish in a flash. Children, families, everything they built. Ochoa leaned toward Reed. "Give the order, Captain. We can fire back. We have ship-grade weapons on the perimeter." Reed shook her head. "If we shoot, they'll call it aggression. They'll justify genocide as self-defense." Park whispered, "Then what do we do?" Reed looked down into the underground structure, the buried light, the hidden door, the secret the Council was terrified of. Then she looked at the Korath beings surrounding the enforcers, silent and steady. "Maybe," Reed said, voice trembling with fear and fury, "we stop playing their game." She turned on her comms, opening a channel she knew the Council would intercept. "This is Captain Mara Reed. We have evidence the Council attempted an illegal extermination by sending civilians to a Class 15 death world. We have proof you are violating your own laws right now." The lead enforcer shouted, "Shut that transmission down." Reed continued anyway, voice rising with emotion. "Fire on my people, and the entire galaxy will hear what you tried to bury." For a moment, the Council craft's charging hum wavered, not because they felt guilt, because they felt fear of being seen. The Council craft didn't fire, yet, but Reed's stone suddenly flashed with a new warning. "The door is open. What sleeps below is waking, and it does not know friend from enemy."
The ground under Mara Reed's boots pulsed once, slow and heavy, like a giant heart waking from deep sleep. Then the light from the underground structure changed. It wasn't brighter, it was focused. The glow gathered into lines, moving like rivers of fire along the curved walls below. The patterns that had looked like decoration now looked like language, symbols flowing, connecting, building meaning. Dr. Park's voice came out thin. "It's activating." Ahoa glanced between the open breach and the Council troops. "If something comes out of there, we're caught between it and them." Reed's stone warmed painfully in her glove. Her suit display filled with one urgent message. "Do not run. Do not shoot. Listen." Reed swallowed. "It wants—" A sound rose from the opening. Not the deep tones the Korath beings used. This was different, layered and sharp, like many voices speaking at once, but synchronized. The sound pressed into Reed's skull, vibrating her teeth. It wasn't just noise. It felt like a presence pushing against her thoughts, searching for a way in. Dr. Park grabbed her helmet. "Captain, my brain!" "I feel it too," Reed said, forcing steadiness.
The council enforcers panicked. One of them shouted, "Contain it! Contain it now!" and fired directly into the opening. The beam hit the glowing wall below. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the beam vanished, as if it had never existed. The underground light flared, angry and bright, and the air snapped with pressure. The enforcer's weapon sparked, then died in his hands. His suit lights flickered, as if the power inside him was being drained. Ahoa's eyes widened. It's taking energy. The lead enforcer backed away. All units retreat, back to the craft. Too late. A shape rose from the breach, not fully solid, not fully light. It looked like a floating frame of glowing lines, forming and reforming, like a thought trying to become a body. It hovered above the opening, tall and silent. And when it turned toward the valley, Reed felt her stomach drop. Because it didn't look at them, it measured them. Numbers flashed briefly on Reed's suit display, her systems reacting to something they couldn't understand. Heart rate spikes, neural signal interference, filter override attempts. Park whispered, voice shaking, "It's scanning us." The Korath giant stepped forward, placing itself between the glowing shape and the human camp. It made a deep tone, stronger than before. The glowing shape paused. Then, impossibly, it answered with a tone that matched the Korath rhythm, like it recognized the language. Reed's display showed new text, not from the stone this time, but from her suit itself, her translator working at its limit. "Guardian, seal broken. Why?" The Korath giant responded with deep tones, slow and steady. Reed didn't understand the sound, but the translator tried to shape meaning. They came. The Ons above broke trust. The Earth Children did not. The glowing shape drifted, turning toward Reed. Reed's breath caught. Every instinct screamed to step back, to hide, to do something. But the stone had said, "Do not run, do not shoot, listen." So she stood still, even as fear crawled up her spine. A new line formed on her display. "Earth Child, state intent." Reed's voice trembled, but she spoke clearly into the open air, letting the translator do what it could. "We came to live. We came for a home. We did not come to steal or destroy. We were sent here without truth." For a moment, the glowing shape didn't move. Then another sentence appeared. "The Ons above seek control. Control breaks worlds. If you stay, you will be tested." Ahoa hissed under his breath, always a test. Reed felt tears sting her eyes. She thought of the people in the habitats, praying she would bring them safety. She thought of Earth, so far away, trusting her to build a future. She thought of the Council, hovering above like vultures that wore clean uniforms. She lifted her chin. "Then test us," she said, voice full of fear and stubborn love. "But test our hearts, not our pain." The glowing shape turned slightly, almost like curiosity. Above, the Council craft engines roared as they began pulling back, retreating from something they no longer controlled. Reed's display flashed one last warning. "The next choice is yours. Protect or conquer, build or burn." Reed's hands shook around the stone. She knew the Council would return, and she knew whatever this buried intelligence was, it was awake now. As the Council ships fled upward, the glowing shape dipped closer to Reed and sent a final message, soft but terrifying. "To protect your children, you must first show us what you are willing to sacrifice."
The message hit Mara Reed harder than any weapon. To protect your children, you must first show us what you are willing to sacrifice. Reed felt her throat tighten. She could hear the colony behind her through the comms, quiet sobs, whispered prayers, nervous breathing. People were waiting for her to save them from the Council, from the planet, from the unknown.
And now the unknown was asking for proof. Lieutenant Ochoa stepped close, voice urgent. "Captain, don't answer that. Whatever it wants, it's not worth our people." Dr. Park's eyes were wet. "Maybe it doesn't mean death. Maybe it means giving up control, giving up weapons, something like that." Reed stared at the glowing shape hovering above the breach. It didn't look angry. It didn't look kind. It looked like a judge that didn't know how to hate, only how to measure. The Korath giant beside them made a low tone. The stone in Reed's hand warmed again, translating the feeling into words. "It does not crave blood. It craves truth. Show it who leads you." Reed inhaled slowly. She understood. This wasn't about losing a life. It was about losing pride. Back on Earth, leaders often protected themselves first. Here, on a Deathworld, that kind of leadership would get everyone killed. Reed opened the colony-wide channel. Her voice shook, but she didn't hide it. "Listen to me," she said. "The Council tried to erase us. Korath Prime stopped them. Something ancient under this planet is awake now, and it's deciding if we deserve protection or if we're just another threat." A quiet wave of fear moved through the comms. Someone whispered, "Oh, God." Reed continued, emotion heavy in every word. "It asked what we're willing to sacrifice to keep our children safe. I'm not going to offer any of you. I won't." Ochoa's shoulders loosened slightly. "But," Reed said, "I will offer myself first." Ochoa spun toward her. "No!" Park gasped. "Captain!" Reed raised her hand. "Not to die," she said firmly, "to lead the risk, to prove we don't send others into fire while we hide behind walls." She turned toward the glowing shape and stepped closer to the breach. Her boots reached the edge. Heat rose from below, soft but powerful, like standing near a massive engine. The air hummed with a pressure that made her skin prickle under the suit. Reed unclipped her sidearm and held it out. "Here," she said, "I won't threaten you. I won't threaten this world. If you want proof, take the first weapon from the leader." Ochoa's jaw clenched so hard Reed thought it might crack, but he didn't move. He watched, eyes burning, trusting her against his instincts. The glowing shape drifted closer. Thin lines of light reached toward the weapon, not touching it like a hand, but like a field testing an object's meaning. The sidearm's power indicator blinked, then went dark. Not broken, deactivated. Reed's display show new text. Weapon set aside. Intent detected. One more sacrifice required. Reed's stomach dipped. "What?" The Korath giant made a low tone. The stone in Reed's hand translated. "Memory. They will touch your mind, to know if you lie." Park's voice shook. "Captain, that's dangerous. If it reads your mind, it might rewrite it," Ochoa finished, voice rough. Reed closed her eyes for a second. She thought of her crew, her families, the children. She thought of Earth, of the Council's cruelty, of the choice hanging over them. Then she opened her eyes and spoke softly. "Do it." The glowing shape moved closer until it hovered inches from Reed's helmet. Light pressed against her visor, not hot, not sharp, just present. Reed felt a pressure behind her eyes, like fingers searching through a locked drawer. She tried to resist, then stopped. "Truth," she reminded herself. "Let it see." Images flashed in her mind. Earth's blue oceans, the Resolute launching, the first look at Korath Prime's storms, the fear on a mother's face, the child whispering, "Pretty." Then deeper memories, her father's funeral, her first command, the moment she promised herself she would never waste lives for pride. Tears drifted inside her helmet. The pressure eased. The glowing shape pulled back slightly. Reed's display show a final line. Truth confirmed. Human leader chooses burden. Protection may be granted if your people agree. Reed exhaled, shaking. It wasn't enough that she was willing. They needed unity, consent, a shared choice. Reed turned toward the habitats and opened the colony channel again. "I did what it asked," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "Now it wants to know if we, together, choose protection by cooperation or if we choose fear and control like the Council." Silence followed, heavy, frightening silence. Then a voice came through, a mother's voice, the same mother from the first day, soft but steady. "We choose each other," she said. Another voice followed. "We choose to build." Another, "We choose not to become monsters." The comms filled, one by one, with fragile courage turning into a stronger sound. Reed felt her chest ache, but this time, it wasn't only fear. It was pride, quiet and clean. The glowing shape drifted upward, and the underground structure's light spread across the valley like sunrise. Then Reed's stone flashed one last warning. "The Council will return with many. If you stay, this world will make you into something they cannot defeat."
The valley changed in a way Mara Reed could feel in her bones. Light poured from the open breach like a gentle tide, spreading across the glassy ground. It didn't burn, it didn't blind, it warmed, like the planet was turning a cold hand into an open palm. The Korath beings around the camp shifted again. This time, they didn't form a cage around anyone. They formed a shield. A wide ring facing outward, as if the true danger was not the Deathworld, but the sky. Reed stood at the edge of the breach, the carved stone heavy in her hand. Her weapon was gone, deactivated, accepted. Her mind felt raw, like a storm had passed through it and left the air clean but thin. Dr. Park stepped beside her, voice small. "Captain, are we really staying?" Reed looked back at the habitats. People were watching through reinforced windows, parents holding children, engineers gripping tools like comfort objects, tired faces lit by hope and fear together. "We didn't come all this way to run," Reed said quietly, "but we also won't stay blindly. We stay with open eyes." Lieutenant Ochoa exhaled slowly, anger still in him, but now shaped into something useful. "Then we prepare, we train, we harden the camp." Reed nodded, "and we learn." The glowing shape hovered above the breach again, calmer now, less sharp. Reed's suit displayed one final message from it, simple and heavy. "Protection is a partnership. We defend those who do not hunger for power. The Sky Ones will return. When they do, you must speak loudly." Reed understood. The Council didn't fear human weapons. They feared human truth. Reed opened a channel not just to her camp, but to every ship that might be listening. Merchant routes, private relays, anyone in range. She didn't dress it up. She didn't soften it. "This is Captain Mara Reed of the human colony Resolute," she said, voice steady with emotion. "The Galactic Council attempted to destroy a civilian colony by sending us to a Class 15 world under false promises. They violated their own laws. They returned with armed forces to silence us." Above the clouds, the Council craft had already pulled back, but Reed knew their recorders were still on. Their attention was still sharp. Reed continued anyway. "Korath Prime is not an empty death world. It is a guardian system, alive and intelligent. The Council tried to keep it buried. They tried to use humans as bait to unlock it." Reed looked at Dr. Park, who nodded and pushed the sensor logs to the broadcast stream. Raw data, timestamps, power readings, proof. Ochoa added security recordings from the drones, Council troops firing first, the underground door opening,
The weapon drain. Proof. Reed felt tears rise again, not because she was weak, but because she was human, and humans cried when they cared too much to stay numb. "We are staying," Reed said, voice shaking slightly. "Not to conquer, not to steal. We are staying to build a home and to protect those who cannot protect themselves. If the Council returns, the galaxy will see it." For a moment, only wind answered. Then, across distant comm channels, voices began to appear, ships asking for coordinates, traders asking what happened, independent observers demanding Council explanations, a ripple of attention spreading outward like fire. Reed looked up at the purple sky. "They wanted us to fail," she whispered. Park answered softly, "They wanted us to die." Ochoa added, almost bitterly, "They wanted humans to be small." Reed tightened her grip on the stone. "But humans don't get smaller when they're cornered. We get together." The Korath giant stepped closer and placed his hand on the ground. The breach began to close, not sealing forever, but stabilizing, like a door left unlocked for allies. The light remained in thin lines across the valley, like veins of sunrise in dark glass. Reed turned to her people and opened the colony channel one last time. "We're not alone here," she said. "This world is dangerous, yes, but it's also honest. It will shape us, test us, and protect us if we keep choosing the right thing." A child's voice came through the comms. "Captain, is it still pretty?" Reed smiled through tears. "Yes," she said, "and we're going to keep it that way." The Council would come back, maybe with fleets, maybe with lies, but now the galaxy had heard the truth, and Korath Prime had chosen its side. The humans didn't win by being the strongest. They won by being the ones who refused to become cruel.